yesterday for the event that we had. First and foremost, I don't really believe that Africa should ever develop with aid, because when you talk about aid, it's almost as if you have a walking stick and it keeps going down and you're going to just simply fall over, right? And so that's not the way in which you're going to really develop. But we have to look at Africa not from an aid perspective, from an investment perspective. And let me tell you why I believe so much in Africa. First is that we take a look at the real GDP growth rates that have been projected by IMF. This year, Africa will grow at roughly 4%. And at 4%, it has the highest growth rate in the world, of all regions of the world. But not only that, something else to pay attention to is that for the first time ever, Africa will maintain that real GDP growth rate as the best in the world for the next 4 consecutive years. So that is not a blip. That is not some kind of cyclical noise. That is something that tells you that this is structural momentum that we are talking about, that is powering the growth. And you can understand why. Macroeconomic stabilization is working better on the continent. Fiscal consolidation is working. A lot more investment in terms of attracting investment, investing in infrastructure, which is leading to productivity growth, and all of that is going on. So that is something to pay attention to. Secondly, is that if you look at global capital, John, you see that quite a lot of that from MTN, you have BlackRock, and you have Vanguard that are investing in it. You have Dangote, for example, which is the largest industrial conglomerate that we have in Africa in terms of cement. You have Safaricom, which is the world's largest mobile company in terms of mobile money. And you look also at Jumia, which is now listed on the New York Stock Exchange in of fintech. So that tells you that Africa here is not just about promise, okay? Africa is about portfolio. These portfolios are working. Now, look at what is happening for those that are investing in Africa. In the last 5 years, the performance of infrastructure assets and also other real assets is probably given about low teens to mid-teens in terms of returns. Now, that is important to the extent that it's also not correlated with public market public assets globally. So that tells you that Africa, right, it's really more exciting for people to look at. And finally, so essentially Africa is fantastic. Finally, let's talk about minerals, metals, and all the things. I'm sure their excellencies are going to talk about this particular issue. John, we have $6 trillion, whether you're talking about lithium, cobalt, manganese, chromium, you're talking about rare earth and all of these things, $6 trillion. When you got $6 trillion, what are you going to do with aid? That $6 trillion, we have to turn that into real assets for ourselves, unlock those assets. That's how we are going to really develop. So the point I want to say is, we are here in UAE, they invest a lot in AI. So if you're doing AI, if you're doing energy, if you're doing agriculture, Madam President will talk about her great work on agriculture. Africa is where it is. So Africa is not aid. Africa is about alpha. It's about, this is the region of the world that you are going to have the highest return. And so I'm very, very confident about that. And therefore, I believe that pay attention to Africa. That's where the alpha is.
Okay, and we're going to drill down here on the role of development banks. Yeah, absolutely the case. Thank you for that. The role of development banks in the region, the global development banks, currency guarantees, how to exit with profits in our next round with you. Before we go further, I call on President Hassan. Prime Minister Levi is going to be speaking in Portuguese. She understands my English, which I'm very pleased about. But she prefers, because we're talking about investment and we have investors in the audience, to go to her mother tongue, which I fully understand. The English translation, I know, is on number 1. And Portuguese is on 6, but I think we're going to have Arabic also in translation as well. So please grab your devices. President Hassan, I talked about the $60 billion. It's not a huge sum for Africa last year, but you pulled in, as a country, $11 billion. Last year, you had 3 mineral resource deals take place. For those who follow energy, and I'm one of them, you have a $42 billion deal pending for LNG, which is a monster, with ExxonMobil, Equinor, Shell, and a regional partner as well. What reforms have you already done to attract that capital. And you were saying that tourism makes up 17% of your economy. It's been very robust. You're the former Minister of Tourism. But what reforms are in place now to attract investment and the guarantees you're giving, and what do you want to do next to entice even more investment, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me in this panel. Going back to your question, that what reforms have you been taking to invite more investment in the country? First of all, we thought we have to create a conducive business environment in the country. So we had to change our policies, laws and regulations to make them more attractive to the investors to come in the country. But number two, we had to have policy consistency, reliable policy, consistency in our policies. That's what we have done. But again, building the necessary investment infrastructure, like the physical infrastructure. We've been working hard in constructing the standard gauge railway. It's about 2,100 kilometers connecting to Burundi, and then it will connect to DRC. And we think that's a major route which can be used from Dar es Salaam port to wherever in the region.
It's very important for the DRC to unlock its mineral resources
yes,
as well, right?
Yes, yes.
That's a major infrastructure project, by the way.
Yes,
the length and the scale you're talking
about. And you know, Tanzania is bordering 8 countries. So we have to make sure we are getting through all 8 countries. So physical infrastructure, roads, railway, but then you know Tanzania is sharing 3 major lakes, Lake Victoria, Lake Nyasa, and Lake Tanganyika. And we have major ports in all those lakes, plus the ports in Indian Ocean. We are surrounded, we have a very big stretch of Indian Ocean where we have 4 major ports, Dar es Salaam ports, which is the main gate. But again, we have Mtwara port to the south of Tanzania, and then we have Tanga port to the north. And we are trying to connect these ports to other areas of Tanzania by railway so that we can transport the stocks which are coming to Tanzania, going to the neighboring countries.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Were you raising the money for these very large infrastructure projects? They're sizable.
Yeah, of course, we have been working closely with the African Development Bank during when Adesina was a president of the bank, but even before. And we are working very well with the World Bank, plus other funds in the Gulf, the OPEC fund, the Abu Dhabi fund, the ADEX, Abu Dhabi Export Fund. So we are working, we are exploring from different funds. So another area, so let me say that in principle, the basic infrastructure for investment growth is already laid in Tanzania. Already laid, and now, and having done that, we have improved the number of projects registered in the country. By 2018, we had around 250 projects, FDIs, in the country. But till 2024, we have registered 970-something projects in the country. And that's from $3.8 billion, and now we have close to $12 billion.
Interesting.
So that's
so you did lay out the
result of the
roll out the carpet for those investors to come in. So I'll park it there with you for just a moment because we're a little bit tight on time, and I'm going to bring in Prime Minister Levi. Again, on the natural resource front, you have a great deal of potential for strategic minerals and rare earths. You finally got that $20 billion LNG project off the ground after some fits and starts in the north, of course. But Total has been very dedicated to it. Eni of Italy's very much involved. How are you making it easier for investors to come in? And Prime Minister, if I may ask, de-risking the assets for investors to say, that's my comfort level, I'm in?
Começaria por saudar a todos os presentes aqui nesta sala, e em particular aos membros deste painel, e dizer que vou mesmo falar em português, vou tentar falar de forma mais calma, para ver se a tradução funciona. Nós costumamos dizer que Moçambique é um país abençoado. Portanto, nós temos todos os recursos minerais possíveis, nós temos hidrocarbonetos, nós temos terras raras, temos terras aráveis, temos água, temos turismo e vários outros benefícios. Em termos de recursos, falava agora da questão do investimento na área de hidrocarbonetos. Realmente, nos últimos tempos, nós enfrentamos vários desafios associados ao terrorismo no norte de Moçambique e que, de alguma forma, condicionaram a exploração do gás de Rovuma. Mas, hoje, estes problemas estão minimizados e nós temos investimentos de empresas globais, como a ExxonMobil, a Total, a Eni, que estão a explorar os hidrocarbonetos em Moçambique, particularmente o gás, um daqueles gases que é de melhor qualidade no mundo. Portanto, há vários países que produzem gás, mas o gás de Moçambique é um gás limpo, um gás de muita qualidade e que torna atrativo para todos os mercados. Mas nós também temos minerais estratégicos. Muito recentemente, semana passada, foi inaugurada uma das maiores fábricas de grafite do mundo e é do conhecimento geral as utilidades que este mineral tem na indústria um pouco ao longo do mundo. Para nós garantirmos que os investidores venham a Moçambique, nós temos um quadro regulatório atrativo e temos estado a trabalhar no combate à corrupção, no branqueamento aos capitais e outras práticas que podem, de alguma maneira, afetar o investimento. Muito recentemente, Moçambique saiu da lista cinzenta do GAFI e sabem quais são as consequências de um país que está na lista cinzenta. Isso limita muito o investimento. Portanto, já estamos a desenvolver uma estratégia de sustentabilidade para que não voltemos a cair na lista cinzenta com todas as consequências daí decorrentes. As infraestruturas são fundamentais para o desenvolvimento de qualquer país e em Moçambique não poderia ser diferente. Moçambique tem uma localização geográfica privilegiada em certos momentos, mas em outros momentos também constitui um desafio. Mas eu queria falar deste aspecto positivo e que faz com que Moçambique constitua um verdadeiro hub logístico. Os países do interior usam muito as linhas férreas, as estradas e os portos moçambicanos para importar e exportar os seus produtos. Isso faz com que nós façamos um investimento significativo na parte logística para garantir que Moçambique seja atrativo e, felizmente, há investimentos significativos tanto nos grandes corredores, dos quais eu gostaria de destacar o corredor de Maputo, que parte do sul, o corredor da Beira no centro e o corredor de Nacala no norte. Portanto, todos os países do Interlante usam esses corredores estratégicos para chegar ao mar. O nosso governo tomou posse no ano passado e definiu alguns instrumentos orientadores sobre a nossa política de investimento, ciente de que temos todo o potencial para beneficiar e capitalizar aquilo que são os nossos recursos e não ir recorrer a pedidos de apoio, como vimos fazendo ao longo de décadas. Um dos potenciais que Moçambique tem é o turismo. A nossa costa é uma costa extensa, com mais de 2.000 quilómetros de costa, e o turismo foi declarado uma das áreas essenciais. Também, no ano passado, determinamos que a província de Inhambane vai ser o polo turístico mais importante de Moçambique e Inhambane, para quem conhece outras ilhas e outros espaços turísticos de grande valor no continente africano, é comparável, por exemplo, a Zanzibar, é comparável a Seychelles, as Maurícias e a outros locais que têm praias paradisíacas e outros atrativos. E, claro, não poderíamos nunca deixar de pensar na agricultura, maior parte da nossa população depende da agricultura. A agricultura é a sua fonte de renda e tem um potencial enormíssimo. Portanto, o investimento na agricultura deve ser potencializado de tal forma que não só constitua fonte de renda para as famílias que dele dependem, mas também que grandes empresas façam parcerias público-privadas para investir neste setor. Nós referimos apenas àqueles setores que acho que têm grande potencial de alavancar o desenvolvimento de Moçambique com parcerias público-privadas e recorrendo a investimento não só interno, como investimento externo, mas não apoio. Obrigada.
Good. I think that's actually what the African Development Bank was trying to do, is encourage. I think the World Bank has been doing the same. The AIIB, the Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank, has been a big player. We only have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to ask to go to our anchor on the other side there, Dr. Adesina, to wrap us up, if I may. How does this go from that ability to de-risk the assets? And I have to really appreciate both the candor of the President and the Prime Minister, because you're addressing very serious issues at play right now. But how do we go from the theory of talking about the shift from aid to investment into practice, in your view? We sat with 4 leaders last night. They were singing from the same hymn sheet. They're not interested in aid anymore, and they want to go down the value chain. They're not interested in natural resource exports, correct? I think you would say the same, President. Can you wrap us up, Dr. Adesina?
Yeah, well, thank you. I just wanted to say that the presidents in Africa are doing a phenomenal job, and that's why I said about the growth that we have in Africa. And I think yesterday was fantastic. We had presidents, from Angola, presidents from Tanzania, Prime Minister here, but also President from Ghana, as we announced what's called the Global Africa Investment Summit. And the reason why this is important is what their excellencies were saying. Take, for example, just the case of the minerals, oil, gas, metals, and all the natural assets that we have. So it's roughly about, $3 trillion right now by 2050. Now, but we only account for no more than 5% of allocation of capital to that. So that is not really, in my view, risk. That is simply mispricing Africa's assets, okay? And so what we have to really make sure is that Africa's assets are properly priced, is always underpriced, our risks are overpriced, okay? And our assets are undervalued. And so what we are saying is that, look, we are going to develop, as they have said, based on the proper unlocking the value of our assets. And unlocking that requires that when people come to Africa, you have to go around. The search costs are very high. The due diligence is very high. There's asymmetric of information. And you also find some of the assets are not properly valued and structured. And so it's very difficult for institutional investors to do that. And so this Global Africa Investment Summit is going to fill that particular gap. And what it will do is that all these assets that Your Excellency are talking about, they are great. These are not your frontier risks. These are assets that are already revenue generating, most of them in FX, most of them long-term, okay, revenue potential of that. We're going to take that through the Global Africa Investment Summit and convert those assets into de-risk investment portfolios for which global investors can actually invest, okay. That way you take a risk on Africa. It's not a frontier risk, but it's actually highly, very, very important. So,
and as you said, there's sovereign assets, which is a guarantee behind it.
Yes, and we will put a lot of guarantees there. There will be multilateral development banks that will work with for partial credit guarantees, partial risk guarantees, but also the governments will play their role in terms of de-risking that, in terms of policy certainty and all of that. That's also going to be very important. But I just want to close by saying I'm so delighted, Your Excellencies, with your leadership, your vision, your commitment, that Africa will not walk on a walking stick and fall over, that we are going to develop with ourselves, using our resources. Africa is not optional. Africa is inevitable. And I think that there's no way in which the world will grow. Madam President, Samia was talking about agriculture, so was Prime Minister. 65% of all the uncultivated arable land left to feed the world is not in Asia, it's not in Latin America, it's not in Europe, it's in Africa. So what Africa does with that is going to determine the future of the world. So I just want to say that Excellencies are doing the right things, and the train is already ready to leave. I think just don't be late.
Thank you very much.
Good way of putting it. You can't have an energy transition without strategic minerals,
Oh, yeah.
and they sit on 65% of them
That is
around the
right.
world, so it's a major play. Before, on a serious note, I mentioned a number of colleagues here at the WGS that I had the Prime Minister of Mozambique on our panel. Our hearts go out to you and the people of Mozambique because you've had tremendous, tremendous floods over the last month, and I know it's been a very tumultuous time. I'm sure the WGS is grateful you made the trip anyway, and I know you served here on part of the president. And I wanted a picture from this panel because I have 2 young daughters, and I said to the president and the prime minister, we've got some girl power here, and Dr. Adesina and I are just happy to share the stage, if you will. Can we give him a nice round of applause? Thanks very much.
Thank you.